This time on the Families Matter Most podcast.
One of the best gauges of a strong leader that I have, it's how do you handle those failures? Because we're going to have them. We're going to have them. Do you act like it didn't happen? Do you shrug it off, or do you go and own it? Because that gets you so much in that well of trust. Like that trust piece is just there. I tell you, Jen, it goes such a long way.
I'm writing this down.
Yeah.
That is what we need to teach our kids.
Yeah.
That is what we need to focus on. It's not about perfection.
Nope, it's not.
Every time Jen Dean speaks, I can see hope, knowledge, expertise, wisdom, and love.
When Jen Dean speaks about parenting, we make sure that we are there to listen because we know we will get valuable advice.
Families Matter Most with Jen Dean.
She doesn't just give skills for us to be better parents, but she teaches us how to reach our children's hearts. And at the end of the day, that's what truly matters.
On the podcast today, I have Phoebe Ciman. Thank you so much.
Nice to be here.
Yes. Phoebe Ciman is special advisor to the provost and vice president academic at Sask Polytech. That sounds like you're the emperor assistant. Before you were the associate dean of health sciences, and now you're something emperor.
I'm an advisor, meaning I give a lot of advice to folks and try and help people out. Sometimes they take it, sometimes they don't. But really, really working close with the academic team at Sask Polytech, so I love it.
Love it.
Yeah.
So super high up academics, super high up leadership. Now you also have played at a really high level of sports. Tell me about that.
I have. I've been really lucky. I started sports in grade 9, which is really crazy. My family moved to Canada when I was 12, and I'm tall, and somebody said, hey, you should try basketball. So it was a really nice way to meet people. I started in that sport, and I progressed playing high school, playing on our provincial team, and eventually playing for university basketball and for Team Canada. So I've been really, really lucky to sort of get the gamut of sports from really grassroots to playing on our national team. So
wow.
I've been really fortunate to see leadership in so many aspects and really thinking through how that translates into the work world.
I know that you do a ton of volunteering, coaching, mentoring too. So you're mentoring probably every age group, including the young men and women that are playing basketball. How's that going?
I do a lot of young people and especially teenagers. I love that age group. I really do.
So do I. A lot of people are afraid of teens.
Yes.
Oh, they are the best.
I agree. And you know, we've raised these young people to sort of be independent, and that's the stage where they challenge us, right? They challenge us, and the voices are changing, and they have the sass. And but it's a beautiful time of life, and I'm a fan of transitions, and it's a good transition. So anyway, I enjoy teaching and coaching teenagers.
You're a fan of transitions.
I am.
Well, Phoebe is an executive coach, so she helps mostly women.
Mostly women and some men, but a lot of women have coached over the years.
And what are the kinds of things that these executive women come to you typically, or men?
Yep.
They come for coaching. Do you see some patterns? Is it the same kinds of things?
Yeah, you know, it varies. A lot of work-life balance stuff. You know, how do I find value and bring my authentic self to work and to home? A lot of people talk about, you know, and a lot of driven people, so they give a lot at work and they feel they come home and there is nothing left in the tank.
How do we do that?
How do we do that? How do we balance that? A lot of women, too, are looking for that next stage, that next transition, and just looking for an advocate, a coach to talk things through because they're not quite sure how to make that next step without being branded as overly ambitious and all those other attributes that get
bossy,
put on women. Yep,
pushy.
Absolutely.
I have been called intense.
Yep, intense.
And it wasn't positive.
No. I know. And so, it's a really, really tough spot because I feel like they have to almost, you know, work twice as hard to get half the recognition, right? So I think there's some of those pieces and just really, you know, talking through what that transition looks like. I think some people have overstayed and when they've outgrown a place and they actually become, I think, toxic in some of those places because they were meant to not be there that long. And they've overstated and almost becoming the problem because they know they should have left. They've outgrown it, but too scared to take that next step.
And now they're bitter.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're
bitter,
part of the problem.
and they're part of the problem, and it's not helpful because that also grinds and wears on their own reputation as well, right? Or they're sitting in a seat that is not for them anymore, and you're actually in someone else's seat.
Or if you care about the mission of the organization, you are hindering it.
Exactly.
At that point.
Exactly.
So you meet with men and women.
I do.
Executive coaching. You help them bring clarity to what is it they want.
I think it's, that's where we start the conversation. I mean, coaching is a lot of listening. A lot of people have the answers within them. They really do. I think what they need are the right questions to really pull that out and really being clear on what their issue is. But first of all, being clear on the goal, and that's where we start. Where do we want to go? And really doing it piecemeal, like not, where do we want to go today? Some people are able to articulate where they want to go in the long term, but we break it down into smaller pieces. And once you can put words to it and actually visualize what you're talking about, then we start getting some more insights, right? Around, what's stopping you and what can you do now? And, just to get to the end, at the end of it, we leave with concrete plans in terms of how you can take those first steps towards that goal, right? So it's really asking the right questions. And it's the same way in leadership, I think, as you lead people. It's not necessarily telling people what to do. It's being curious enough to get the right questions in front of them so they can sort it out themselves.
So getting really clear.
On
what exactly they're after. And then figuring out what's holding them back from getting that. And I'm curious, is it usually logistical? They have to sort this out, or is it personal?
I think it's both. I think usually because we're so busy, people don't sit in the issue or the challenge to really sort out what they need. And sometimes it's personal, but sometimes it's even thinking about what supports you need to make that happen. I mean, no one's an island.
Right.
So some of it is personal. You might need more education, or you might need to free up some time to really do what you want to do. But it's also, who do I need to ask for help? And I think sometimes in this world, we've sort of seen that as a weakness, to ask for help. But it's not, right? And if you feel that way, maybe it's a trade, right? And sometimes I think you have things on the table. Hey, can you do this for me and I'll take your kids for a couple hours? Or can you?
Yes.
So you can barter. So anyway, it's really thinking through what are the resources to help you be successful.
I think certain personalities are not prone to considering asking for help as a first line. I have my hand up here. One of my coaches, my homework, my challenge was every Friday I had to ask for help.
Wow.
And I hated it, Phoebe.
My goodness.
I have to ask and it's interesting because on some level I understand. Of course I'm not perfect.
Yeah.
Sure. Why wouldn't I? I would be an idiot to not take advantage of someone else's wisdom and skill. But yet come Friday,
it's not easy.
I got to ask for help. And it never comes naturally to me. I never think of it, which is why it's an alarm in my phone on Fridays.
Yeah, it is. It is not easy. Like, it is not easy. And I don't know where you are in the birth order, Jen, but I'm a firstborn too.
Firstborn.
And and it's even worse, right? Wasn't there's a meme going around where there's no stronger man than a firstborn woman.
Absolutely.
But it's it's so true because we're taught to be independent and strong and all of those, and we see that as a weakness, and it is not. It is really not. There's so many insights that we don't have, but I struggle with that one as well. I really do.
What do you think holds people back from making that shift to maybe a new career altogether or applying for that position, from putting themselves out there?
I think the comfort of where they are. I think people can talk a big game, but when it comes down to actually doing it, it's a start. So you're starting, there's going to be a learning curve wherever you go, new relationships. And some people just get comfortable in the routine. Change is hard, full stop, whether you're good at it. And I'm one of those people that actually enjoy change. And it's still difficult.
It's still hard,
It's still difficult. I'm self-aware enough to know that there are phases of change and you'll go through them. But I think sometimes people just stay content because they don't know what's on the other side. And they'd rather stay with what they have.
Right.
Which is unfortunate because, especially if you're ready to change. I mean, nothing wrong with people that are content where they are.
100%.
But, a lot of people I've found in my experience anyway have outstayed where they're supposed, and they've outgrown those places.
So some of the fears that I come across,
Yeah.
I think would translate into your coaching would be the fear of the unknown, kind of like we've been talking about.
Yeah.
The fear of failure, of
Yeah.
course.
Yep.
But also the fear of success.
Oh my goodness.
That's a real thing.
That's a real thing.
I know a lot of people would say, I'd like to experience that fear, thank you. But it's a real thing.
It really is. And what does that mean? And, it's sort of like the crab buckets thing as well. Like, I think people are just comfortable just being normal, being average, right? Because at some point, sometimes we're not the nicest to each other. Someone's exceeding, and we feel that that's going to make us stand out. That's going to make people look at us differently. I'm going to be on display, perhaps.
Oh, yes.
And who am I? Like, who am
do you
I?
think you are?
Who do you think you are to be on that stage, right? Who do you think you are to be on that post? How can you speak on that topic? Who made you the expert? Who made you?
Well, that's
who gave
mean.
you that authority,
Phoebe,
right?
stop saying those things to me.
I know. And you know what the sad part is? We say that to ourselves more than anything. We say that to ourselves, and that part is a little sad. And if you're surrounding yourself by people or you have friends that make you feel that way, just really look at those friends and investigate if those are the most positive relationships to have. Because the people that celebrate you and are your true friends will want to see you blossom, whatever that looks like.
Absolutely. I have the best friends.
Oh.
I'm so grateful for my community.
So lucky, so grateful.
Tell me about the crab bucket, though, because if I recall, is that like they will fight each other to keep each other
Yes,
down?
from my understanding, yes. If you try going, they will bring you back down, right? So it's like, get back down with
If
the
I
other.
can't survive,
Yeah.
then neither can you.
Exactly. Or the poppy seed syndrome, is that what it's called too? Yeah, like going to cut you back to come back down to earth, right? Like, who do you think you are,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And that's a problem, right? It's jealousy. It's people that are not looking for you to succeed, and that's unfortunate.
Would you agree? I'll be honest. I feel like women are worse at this than men, sadly.
I don't think, and the sad part with this, Jen, like I've noticed that, and I'm not saying that doesn't happen with men too, but for some reason, I think for so many years there were such few seats around the table. I think for women, and so many women had to fight so hard to get the little
Yes.
crumbs that were available.
Right.
And so that mindset doesn't disappear overnight. I mean, I think people still feel, instead of seeing 5 seats around the table for 5 individuals, and it might end up being 5 women if that's the case, they see that they're in one seat and they feel they have to fight the next woman for that one seat, right? It's this scarcity sort of
Yes.
reality that we've been put into, which is unfortunate. And I see, unfortunately, in my experience, I've seen women go after women more. And that part is really, it's sad for me to see. Because even if you engage in that, you end up looking not great.
There's no way to win.
There's no way to
in
win.
That. You know
Nope.
what I see is for women that have had to overcome some obstacles to get to where they are.
Yeah.
There's almost this like, oh no. I had to pay the dues.
did.
So
Yep.
you get in line,
Yep.
you got to pay the dues now.
Yep.
And I think, is that who we want to be?
Yep.
That's not who I want to be.
Yeah, exactly. Do you go through that door, or do you go through that and pull people up,
Right.
with you? And I think because we have this mindset of scarcity, we don't see that person being our ally or being someone that will support us to elevate our game.
Yeah.
We've been taught sometimes to see that person as competition. And it's really unfortunate because you don't see, and I'm not saying it's not there with the guys, but it's not to that level, right? And I think sometimes people, they just sit and just watch this happen. And I think you have mediocre, like, I do not want the bar lower for us. And I think a lot of high achieving
no.
women do not, like, we have high standards and we want to push the envelope, but just don't let the mediocre guys take the place. And that's what happens when we get into these little skirmishes. That's what it makes us. It makes us look small. It makes us look petty. And we just have mediocrity continue to rise while we're sitting and
Right?
fighting over crumbs, and they're
No.
having freaking caviar and French bread.
No. Now I have it in my head. Tell me if
Yeah.
if I'm right, and maybe hopefully I'm right.
Yeah.
I suspect that as you get higher up in leadership, that some of that would disappear. I have this idea that it would be better at the top because we're better humans up there.
Oh, people are people, Jen. I get people are people.
No.
And and the stories I hear from my friends and my community, no, it never goes away. No, it's still unfortunately around those tables. And I sometimes I think it even gets worse. And I think if you have someone who has risen and is carrying that, all of those pieces, right? Whether it's the imposter syndrome or feels like they had to pay their dues.
Yes.
I think they almost come with that extra layer, of frustration, and they're watching to see, are you coming from my spot? Are you coming from my slot? Right? Instead of just being comfortable enough being themselves. Because you made it to that stage based on a lot of great things and attributes that you bring to the table.
Yes.
And instead of celebrating that. And so I worry sometimes about those leaders that don't take that time, because it's like you'll blink and it'll be over. And what do you want to remember from that time?
Yes.
Right. So unfortunately, it is there. But there's also, I think, great opportunity to work through that. You know what I mean? And it's the self-awareness. I don't think people realize it's happening around those tables, but it is. It is happening.
I like to think that the better leaders we are, the more personal development we do, the more coaching we engage in, the higher up we go, maybe the more we recognize we don't know. But I guess
yes, we don't know.
Not everyone does those things.
But I think those, Jen, you were talking about those communities and those people that really ground you and support you and all of those pieces. And I think as people, climb, whether it's the corporate ladder or in their businesses, like, you can't lose sight of that, right? And you can't lose sight of what the struggle was to get to where you are.
Right.
Because I think that gives you some empathy of the others that are looking to you for mentorship and growth. And I think the higher up you get in an organization, it's less about some of those technical skills, right? It's like, how do you bring people? How do you broaden the capacity of others, right? How do you leave that legacy? How do you train and educate and bring up the next group of folks? Because those are the things that are important,
and
right?
that requires an extreme level of self-awareness.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
The interpersonal skills, the EQ, right? All of that, the emotional intelligence.
It does. And just knowing that every step you take is even more magnified, right? So if you're going to pick favorites, I know you just have to be aware of some of those things, right? Like, how are you treating people that report to you, people that don't report to you? How do you carry yourself? Do you have integrity, right? So am I similar person? Not saying you can't change tactics when you're in different rooms, but if I am 100% this person when I'm talking to Jen, I'm different when I'm talking to Bobby. I'm like, you can't keep that up. And I think because people feel they have this imposter syndrome, they feel they have to put on a certain kind of performance in different rooms, and you have to be yourself at the end of the day. You have to. And I think a lot of the coaching I do sometimes is just working with people and the talents and skills that they do have, because they have them. Right. But I think sometimes we bury it to act in what we think we should be bringing to that table. Yeah.
So Phoebe Desmond, executive coach. But what I'm hearing, the things that we're talking about, fear of the unknown, fear of failure, working on ourselves, building each other up. These are skills that we can all be working on wherever we're at, whether we're in executive leadership, whether we are working anywhere at all, whether we're at home with the kids. Whether we're mentoring kids, whether we're volunteering somewhere. Hey, if you're doing life with other people, and I'm pretty sure you are, then you can apply some of these things that we're talking about today. Because, Phoebe's saying they don't go away. Let's work on them now.
Exactly. And I think sometimes just naming them, right? And naming them, and I mean, I make mistakes all the time, right? I do. And, sometimes I'm caught where you have to, when that happens, how do you own it, right? Like, we're not perfect. We're going to make mistakes. So whether you're apologizing to your kids, which I have to, your partners, or work people, right? Like, if you betrayed someone's trust, or, you just maybe went off in a meeting and just used language you shouldn't have, or what do you do after? I think that's actually one of the best gauges of a strong leader that I have. It's how do you handle those failures? Because we're going to have them. We're going to have them. Do you act like it didn't happen? Do you shrug it off or do you go and own it? Because that gets you so much in that well of trust. Like that trust piece is just there. And if you can just be honest, I tell you, Jen, it goes such a long way.
I'm writing this down.
Yeah.
That is gold. And that is something, I mean, that is what we need to teach our kids.
Yeah.
That is what we need to focus on. It's not about perfection.
Nope, it's not.
And Sean, you're editing this for me, and I love you. You're so sexy. But I think that would be a really great clip for the very beginning.
Yeah. Thanks, Sean. We love you, Sean.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. That's so good. I want to talk more about leading our kids and the people around us.
Sure.
But before we get there, I feel like I would be remiss. I would regret it if I didn't ask you about one of the top things that people want coaching on, want business or executive coaching on, and it's wage negotiation. So you told me a stat. You told me that women won't apply for a job unless they are, 100, 110?
Yeah, over 100% of every single competency that's listed on the on the job ad.
They have to be completely confident.
And then some.
That they could do every single thing listed, or they won't apply.
Yeah.
So that's a problem you need to work on them with, because men, they don't act
60%, about 60% of the competencies, the research shows, and they will be comfortable enough to put their name and throw their names in the hat, right? They
like,
see it as
hey,
this growth. Yay!
I'll figure it out.
I'll figure it out, right? It's that confidence, and that's unfortunate because I think we have a lot of talented women that don't even get into the pipeline.
Women in particular, most of the listeners to the pod, not all. If there's a man, welcome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Most of the listeners of our podcast are women. And I got to say, if you listening have ever disqualified yourself because you were not 100% confident, Phoebe would say, no way, girl.
No way. No, you throw your name in because you know what? I think women downplay all the transferable skills we bring to the table. And I think we just haven't been able to fully articulate a lot of things and a lot of unpaid work and labor and thinking and just experiences that we've had and putting it in the work context if that's the case, right? So it might be a business or a work. If you talk about managing kids' timetables, that's time management. You talk about goal setting. I mean, you have people are running households and all of these pieces, but women do a lot of unpaid work in our society, and they have since the start of time. But those skills are so transferable into the workplace.
If you are a parent and you do not have advanced conflict resolution on your resume, you update that today.
PhD. PhD in advanced conflict management. I agree with you.
Absolutely. Now, something else, and this kind of directly relates, is, well, first of all, we disqualify ourselves, which is a problem. But secondly, wage negotiation. This is a big one, isn't it?
It's a big one, and I haven't done this well for most of my career. I must confess, right? And I think it's something a lot of people I talk to and a lot of my friends struggle with this one. I think women really struggle with this piece. And I also think there's a thing about Canadians and Saskatchewan people in particular where we are humble and people talking about, but it's not necessarily, it's not always the driving force, but it's the way that this society and the way we are compensated is how we show the value of the work and what you bring to the table. And I think really thinking that through, and you usually have one opportunity to make that case, right? And it's unfortunate at the beginning when you're having that conversation. And a lot of people that are going into organizations especially, and that's where I've sort of had my experiences, you have to be willing to negotiate at that spot, because once you're in there, it is so difficult, and you've already said this is what I'm worth, and you're willing to take it.
And they're not going to just volunteer to give you more money.
Very, very rare.
Yes.
But I've also been in a situation where I've had to do it mid-career, because you look around and you're making 75 cents on the dollar to your colleagues doing the same job and the same experience, sometimes even more education, more experiences, but they had the wherewithal to negotiate the right way at the beginning.
And you can't blame them.
Yeah.
Nothing on them.
Yep. And you're thousands down the road, right? So I think it's something to really, really think about and be mindful. And that means doing some homework before, but being willing to be clear about what your worth is. And also being willing to walk away if someone is insulting you with that proposal, right? Like being confident and comfortable enough to walk away if your talents aren't being recognized in the way they should be. And I'm not saying this is if you don't have this is not if you're applying to be a doctor and you haven't gotten med school. I mean, that's a hot mess.
Well, that's
you cannot do that, people.
You need some other coaching.
But if you're qualified and you have the expertise, be clear and be confident.
There's a fear.
When you negotiate. Yeah.
Particularly around women, I would say, of, what if I'm asking for too much? What if, it's too much? How often is that the case where you've ever had to say to someone, you're asking for too much?
Almost never. Almost never. Not with women. It's a low ball. And I think people come to the table and they'll just recognize how hard I'm working. And all I'm doing, and someone will see it somewhere and possibly maybe tell the right person who might tell the right person who, and the world doesn't work that way, unfortunately. And not saying people can't recognize your worth and you can't have sponsors, but do your homework and be willing to ask for what you're worth. And you'll know. I mean, a lot of people in their business know the ranges. You have to be prepared, but you have to be clear on what you're willing to work for. Because we only have a limited amount of time. Time is your most valuable asset. If you're giving your time and your talents and your emotion and your passion into something you care about, you should be compensated for it, especially when the funds are there, because you could be doing the same work with someone and and you won't be valued that way. So it's one that I really notice, especially with women in the workforce. And unfortunately, it doesn't change as we go up the food chain. It's something we really, really see. And I think a lot of women struggle too, because it's not always the case where women step out of the workforce for a while and come back in. Yeah. And that impacts women's salaries typically as well. But you have to be willing to advocate for yourself.
Phoebe Ciman, Special Advisor to the Provost and Vice President Academic at Sask Polytech. Tons of leadership expertise and executive coach. What I'm hearing in this is that if you are wanting to make a change and you want to negotiate a higher wage, I think it would be a well worth it investment to get a coach ahead of that. Because according to Phoebe, your best shot is at the beginning of those negotiations.
Absolutely.
So it would be worth it to have the investment, get the skills, get the coaching so that you can go into that negotiation feeling confident,
strong and confident. And you have to make the case, right? People aren't willing to just throw money away, but you have to make the case of why you're worth that.
Yes.
And what value you're bringing to the company and why that's a great bet for them as well. So, it's a two-way street. They want you, and that's why you're in those conversations. Yes. I mean, you're usually competing against many to get to that stage. You have won. I mean, for lack of a better term, you really have. And so I think you have to be willing to know your worth and really be clear on why you're the best person in that role. And you know what? I'm learning too. Even as I've moved along in my career, I don't know it all. I really don't. And I have a coach too that I talk to and trusted friends and mentors that I check in with all the time, right? Especially when I'm having those times where I'm a bit frustrated and you're having those moments where you're like, oh, how do I handle this? You still need to be able to do that as well, to fill your cup, because you can't give what you don't have. So I continue to ask people I trust and that I value their opinions and how they move around the world. And that keeps me grounded. It does.
So Phoebe has a reputation.
Oh, no.
Yes, let's trash Phoebe now. No. I was going to say good things.
Okay.
Phoebe has a reputation.
Yes.
For being a leader with integrity.
Aww.
And I just want to say that's a high honor. That would be for me.
You.
That's one of my goals. And so I just want to say people see that.
Thank you.
And you're known for that. And that's worth something.
Well, thank you. That means more to me than you know. I think I really do try to carry myself in the world that way. And like I said, I'm not perfect, but it hurts when everyone gets those moments where tough things happen, right? Yes. And everyone goes through some tough things. But if you can support people and be your authentic self, I think people see it. You don't even, people see it. People see it. And I appreciate that a lot.
Now, as we're kind of wrapping up, though, I know I am, and I know everyone listening is like, but Phoebe, give me some parenting tips. Like, what do we do? What can we do to help our kids? No, so you can pull from your leadership. You can pull from academics. You can pull from sports.
Yeah.
What are some of the things? We're talking about integrity.
Yeah.
What are some of the best character lessons, and how can we help our kids to learn them?
Oh my gosh. There's so many, so many. But maybe I'll pick one of the ones that are just top of mind because it's most recent. And I think one thing I'll say is, we can do hard things. My son, who's 11, not a big runner. My kids do jiu-jitsu and they're into it. But I wasn't an athlete even until grade 9. And some of my teammates, even in university, will probably say you are not the athlete. I've always been a geek and that's been my thing. And my head's usually in a book more than anything. But he ran in the Queen City Marathon, just the 3K. A good friend of his decided to do it and he joined, and he was not a big runner, and he ran with his dad for a few weeks before.
So he trained.
He trained.
Yes.
He worked his body, and on that day, I tell you, it's not an easy race, but he did it. And when he started the race, and I hope he doesn't mind me saying that, there were some tears, and we saw him start, and I'm like, oh my goodness, what the kids mean to him, because 11 to 14, he was in the younger.
Yep.
And he does, and after we were talking, he's like, oh no, Mom, I was just excited and nervous at the same time.
Yes.
But he did it because he said he wanted to beat a certain time. It was 20 minutes. He did it at 18 minutes and 40 seconds with his good friend. So you can do hard things. So that's the first thing I would say. I think that's
that's so good. I'm hearing
so important.
Eye of the Tiger in the
Yes.
back. Dun, dun, dun. Good job.
You can do hard things and come to the other side of it. I think that's one thing. And I think maybe I'll pick one more lesson is, and maybe this one's from sport. It's like, to be good at anything, you have to put the time in and you have to put the commitment in. It doesn't just happen magically. And I think that's the good thing. I had a big surgery this summer, and I'm in the physio stages of it, and it's not easy.
No.
It's not easy. And I've drawn on my time as an athlete, recovering from injury and knowing how much you can push yourself and just what it looks like on the other end when you actually put that work in. And so that is really helping me with that. And I think, the last thing I would say, and it's not the only lesson, but be okay with being vulnerable in front of those little people, right? In front of your kids, and let them see some of those times when you're not always super mom. Because I think that's important, right? We try and put on this image that we think our kids will see and try and emulate, or we have to project this strength and know it all, and we don't always know it all. And I'm not saying use your kids as your therapist, but I think they need to see what that looks like for you to be vulnerable and working through that.
See that you're a real person.
You're a real person under there. You're a real person trying to do your best. And I think that's important. That's important. And I think that goes in the workplace as well. Again, you're not using all your staff members as your therapist, but I think they have to see a real person. And they have to know you're authentic. And when things are tough or something how do you act in those moments when it doesn't always go your way? Because that's bound to happen.
Well, and that's what you said earlier, Phoebe. One of the number one things you're looking for is not if we screw up, but when we screw up. What do we do with that?
100%.
Can we go back and say, you know what, that didn't come out the way that I wanted it to. I'm so sorry. And so if we want our kids to be good at this, we got to go first. No, it's so true. We have to go first. I betrayed your trust there. Or, oh my goodness, I said that the wrong way. And don't put that's what we do. And you try and rationalize it. Just own it. Just let it
just
sit there.
Own it. And sometimes even ask, what can I do to make this better? What can I do? And just sit with that for a while. Right. And you'll find a way. You really find a way, and you'll build that trust. You will build that trust with people. So, it's really important to have those conversations, but they're not easy conversations to have. They're really not easy conversations to have, but they're critical if you want that growth or if you want to nourish that relationship.
They're worth it.
Yeah, if you want to nourish, and sometimes they're not worth it. I know sometimes. And I know I've walked away from some relationships when I think it's just, you can't be vulnerable in every situation. I think sometimes when people hear this advice, they think you have to do it everywhere. You can't. You can't leave. You have to be very particular, very intentional about whom you do that with, right?
And don't do it on Facebook.
Oh, God. I will tweet that. No. Yeah. Do not do that on Facebook. Yeah.
Yeah, don't put that on your LinkedIn.
That's a face-to-face. That's a face-to-face conversation for sure.
Phoebe, thank you so much for being my podcast guest. I don't know whether this is going to feel more like leadership podcast or parenting podcast or just like doing life podcast. Doing life, because it all intertwines, doesn't it?
Oh, it just does, Jen. And I don't know, I learned a lot too in this conversation, like I said, and we got to have some fun doing, dancing, swinging with the stars and doing some great things in the community. But yeah, it's having the chance to have conversations like this, you know what I mean? I think it's just so good because we're all just trying to do life, right? We're trying to do life as best as we can. And try not be, jackasses along the way. Try and be as good as we can, right?
That's
try and
the
be
goal.
as good people. That is the goal. So keep bettering yourself, right? So
people that want to maybe perhaps get some executive coaching from you,
Yes.
they want to set up a consultation to
Yes.
talk about wage negotiation.
Yes.
How can they find you?
you know what? They can find me on LinkedIn for now. I haven't. I am in the process of doing something more formal. So I will be in touch, and hopefully we can update that and get that information out. But I'm on LinkedIn, and just at Phoebe Desmond. You can find me and send me a message. I'll be happy to link up.
Find the
chat.
show notes for this podcast, and we'll have a
Okay.
link to
Perfect.
Phoebe's LinkedIn page.
That would
so
be
you can
great.
click on over and
Awesome.
let Phoebe know that you heard about her. You heard her
Yep.
on my podcast, please, and thank you.
Jen, thanks for the conversation.
Phoebe,
This was lovely.
you are so wonderful.
Oh, thank you. Ditto.
Thanks for listening to the Families Matter Most podcast with Jen Dean. Book a free strategy call today. For more podcasts, online courses, or just to get more information, visit familiesmattermost.com.